The select committee I chair started its initial inquiry into fake news actually in 2017, and we were then very interested in the studies that had been done, principally looking at the presidential election in America, which showed that the volume of fake news linked to the election was in some cases greater than real news. The top 20 real news stories had a smaller audience online on Facebook. Fake news was presented in such a way to try and make it look real. I think what became clearer as the inquiry went on was, yes, it is partly a content problem, but it's also about data targeting as well. They are being spread in a targeted way using data profiling of individual voters to target them with specific pieces of information. Often the voter being targeted doesn't know that they are being targeted. They don't necessarily know who is targeting them, and when they see the content that's been served to them, they don't even necessarily know where in the world it has come from. Although people understood that they create a data footprint when they're online, I don't think people really understood just how much data was gathered about them. And I don't think people understood that Facebook monitored what you did or collected data about what your activities online were, even when you weren't on Facebook. I don't think people understood that if you had an Android phone, that your Facebook app on your phone was keeping a record of all of your phone calls and text messages. The reason there was an issue around what Cambridge Analytica were doing is in breach of Facebook's own policies, they were getting Facebook user data, and not just the data of users, the data of users' friends. And the reason at that time there was considerable value placed on this is academics and researchers who've been looking at psychological profiling of people online. How could you gain an insight into their thoughts, what motivated them? They believed that by analysing someone's Facebook likes, you could develop a very accurate profile of that person. And you could even predict their behaviour more accurately than their best friend could predict it. So you don't need to have a profile of everyone on Facebook. If you've got some really good sort of sample size sets of Facebook users, you can use that as a means to very effectively targeting people. Now, there are two really important issues that come out of this. Firstly, Cambridge Analytica wrongly acquired that data from Facebook. The profiles of 87 million Facebook users. And if you think then that's just the working set, having that much data would enable you to develop a huge database profiling most of the voters in America. And Facebook knew about that at the end of 2015, and it wasn't at all clear what they did about it. And certainly they didn't appear to do anything to try and get that data back or make sure it had been destroyed. There's also, I think, an ethical issue as well for the Facebook users. There may be some people that have decided not to reveal their political affiliations on their profile page. You don't have to, but it's one of the things you can choose to do. But if what Facebook is doing instead is guessing how you vote, and then selling that guess onto a political campaign who will then target you with that information, is that right? And I've got big concerns about the ethics of the way data is used to target voters in political campaigns without their consent.
When you try to reach out to people like Mark Zuckerberg, they refuse to testify.
I think it's been disappointing that Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't testify, and I think he has a responsibility to the users of Facebook, the 2 billion Facebook users around the world that use his service every day. I think what's happened to Facebook has been wrong, and the problems that have occurred at Facebook around the leaking of data to outside suppliers, the way in which data is gathered and used to target Facebook users with advertising, all of these things have happened because of the way Facebook makes money out of the site. These are things that have been done to help Facebook make money. And he's responsible for those decisions, and I think he needs to make himself more available for public scrutiny and questioning.
Facebook is one example, but what about the other platforms? I mean, you're in coordination with FBI, etc. I mean, what are the kind of attitudes that these platforms have?
They're often very difficult to hold to account. It's difficult to get straight answers to straight questions. They will routinely not disclose information that might be relevant to your question if you've not expressly asked for it. So we've had this painful process through the inquiry of constantly going back over old issues and old ground. In the initial hearings we had with Facebook in particular, they weren't able to tell us anything about data being taken from Facebook. They will then say, well, the person giving evidence didn't know that was the case. So, and I think what's happened, this all feeds a picture of distrust and declining trust in these tech companies. I think they have to do more now to win people over. In particular, people look to Mark Zuckerberg to provide leadership for the company.
Does that mean sort of these tech companies and all these platforms, they're a bit of a wild west at the moment? They need to be regulated. I mean, this is the time to do that now.
Yeah, it has been a wild west. The tech sector has grown really quickly. With Google on search, with YouTube, with user-generated video content, Facebook as for social networking. These platforms are almost monopolies in the spaces in which they operate, and that's why it's even more important there is somebody that's got the right to oversee what they're doing and to intervene if they feel there's a problem.
What is the relationship between the regulations and also the freedom of expression, etc.?
Well, as I said, we have freedom of speech in this country, but you don't have the right to go into a crowded theatre and shout fire.
What kind of year is it going to be for the Silicon Valley elites in 2018?
I think 2018 will be seen as a watershed year for them. We're seeking to hold them to a higher level of account as well, and to be more challenging about their responsibility to society and to their users and customers. And I think we're going to move into this world where the absolute platform neutrality they've enjoyed in the past will be eroded by new responsibilities placed upon them. If something is not okay in the real world, it's not okay online either.